This is Cow, the podcast. Yeah, welcome to Cow, the podcast. This week, bringing you a piece that is, I guess, a little bit less fact and a little bit more opinion, really, just less referring to the experts and the research, more just me telling it how it is. Turns out that if you ask the right question, then a big majority of voters will say they prefer to be doing something for future generations, rather than just going in for a short-term fix, which is what we've been led to believe. Well, that's what they say, and that's great, because that's what I'm looking at here. And I guess I can write this piece now, because whilst it's taken me all of this time to work out that I was suffering from some form of depression, stress, or anxiety, luckily for me, I had access to a good set of tools to help me out, good mates, mentors, and more, and here I am. So I'm going to talk about the causes of depression, the importance of environmental or cultural factors, and about the way our grand narrative distracts us from seeing and dealing with the real causes. I'm going to explain the dangers of mind hacking and the way that the use of censorship works only to exacerbate the problems we face. And I'm going to introduce the idea of a new conversation that is emerging out of the ruins of our existing narrative. This is a conversation that seeks to acknowledge our deepest fears, to uncover common goals, and that seeks to find agreement. This is a conversation that we may all join. It's community over division. And it's a conversation to which people are turning in great numbers. Its importance shouldn't be discounted. It's a conversation that requires honesty and openness and ultimately free speech. To start with, a minor bugbear for me, but with bigger implications. It's my own worry to some extent about what I'm putting out. I worry that concentrating on what I found distressing and depressing might just go on and depress everybody else out there if I carry on banging on about it. And I can see that point. And it's really not what I have in mind. I'm optimistic about what we can do in the world. Maybe I should concentrate on how the world is getting better. The idea being that if we only hear good news, the world could be a happier place. Anxiety gone and everything fixed. Well, if you want some good news, then okay. There's a conversation that has started. But hey, look, I don't agree that we stick to only the good stuff. I don't think it works that way. We need absolutely to talk about these things. The darker side. We are herd animals, prey animals, stronger in groups and communities than as single activists. We're designed to react to stress, designed to feel anxiety, to hear our instinct talking to us, telling us maybe how we've strayed too far from the crowd, or being told just to get back in there. And maybe there's an irony to this, that while we may feel alienated and alone, none of us actually are on our own in this. We're all in this, together. And I can't help myself with a few facts and figures here, because all of them say that mental health issues in the UK and in the West more generally are getting worse. It's an epidemic, like the system has taken on a life of its own and we're getting cast out or left behind. I have to question who the system's working for when antidepressant prescriptions used to treat anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, panic attacks and depression have increased, more than doubled, from 31 million to 65 million in the decade from 2006 to 2016. And even then, it's only 1 in 3 people who say they suffer from one of those disorders who say they're getting treatment for them. That's a lot of suffering. Now, we can question whether this is simple overprescription or better diagnosis of a problem that's always been there, but I think the figures reflect what I'm seeing. My personal experience, what you cannot deny is that this is suffering. And as the doctors might say, it's suffering caused by low serotonin levels. So let's stick with this for a while. Are the drugs doing their job? Well, the drugs, working on the theory that depression is caused by low serotonin levels, will help. No doubt they can balance serotonin levels. They have their uses in individual cases. They can save lives. But how much effect do they have on the symptoms? Well, it turns out that one of the ways of measuring depression is to use the Hamilton Rating Scale, a questionnaire designed to rate the severity of depression by probing mood, feelings of guilt, suicide ideation, insomnia, and agitation or retardation. It takes in anxiety, weight loss, and somatic symptoms. It scores from 0 to 51. The drugs, on average, affect a movement of no more than 1.8 points on this scale. 1.8. So if medical theory, serotonin replacement can only account for such a small improvement, surely that leads us to the question of asking what causes the rest of this 51 degrees of suffering. And when we ask that, we find many environmental factors have a part to play. And we find sleep, for example. A better sleep pattern will move the scale on average 6 points. The causes of depression, anxiety, etc., and bear with me for just putting it out there, are found to be feelings of a lack of control, feelings of isolation, feelings of irrelevance, and an inability to see a clear future. These are environmental stresses, causes that relate to your beliefs, your belief system, and to your cognitive landscape. The problem is not that your brain is malfunctioning, lacking in the right chemicals. The problem is that the way you are living your life makes no sense to your biology. This is your billion-year-old biological self telling you to change things up. This is your behavior stimulating the chemical balance. All of us, these days, all of us are living with elevated levels of stress and feeling the alienation, the isolation, the loneliness that comes with it. If we don't talk about it, if we push this under the carpet, there'll just be more isolation, more alienation, more suffering. And whilst we may be out in the open, each one of us then exposed and vulnerable, out on the Serengeti plain, there's safety in numbers, in belonging. We're not alone. Now, this works out to me as an argument for free speech. It extrapolates out into this bigger question, bigger conversation. It's like having to approach any subject these days that might scare the kids suddenly becomes difficult or impossible. Or maybe any subject that will offend somebody, like this stuff should be hidden away because it might scare the kids. Well, maybe that's the point. Maybe this is what our kids need. Maybe what we need. Maybe they're crying out to be given some level of responsibility for their own lives, and maybe they'll be able to do a better job of coping with it than we've done. Maybe we won't scare them, and maybe they'll just find the mechanisms to deal with it, their own. I mean, you can ask how old the fighter pilots were in World War II. Maybe our job as parents ought to be to introduce our children to the fear, to challenge, to hierarchy. This is gently, of course, and in balance. But let them fight in the playground. Work out their hierarchy unsupervised. Let them understand who they are. Let them shoulder some responsibility. Let them experience risk and loss and triumph and learn to deal with it all. Not easy, but with it comes a rite of passage. To protect them from this and that is to starve them of emotional growth and the means to thrive. Mentally unhealthy. Nietzsche, Jung, Thomas Campbell, Jordan Peterson, all welcome this journey. It's a fundament of human existence, and they embrace the darker side of it, and from that comes emergence and metamorphosis. My worry is that if we only keep to hearing the good news, we might just as well be creating a new Stepford, in which we all fall prey to stupid governing algorithms, in which we're kept dumb and lacking like farmed beasts. Stepford Wives, for anyone who needs introducing to this, is a 1972 novel by Ira Levin, in which a young mother, a photographer, begins to suspect that the frighteningly submissive housewives in her new idyllic neighbourhood may be robots created by their husbands. But maybe people need to feel good. If so, can Stepford be the way forward? Well, I'm saying no. Stepford will be a living hell. Can't possibly hope to move forward, to evolve without questioning where we are and without discovering what's wrong with now. Creative results flow from critical thinking, and that means taking a long, hard look at the bad stuff. I hope my fundamental message is one of hope, but this is through discovery, through opportunity, not through blindness. But maybe Stepford isn't so far away. Already we're aware of the dangers of social media. We know how easily addicted we can be and distracted and manipulated. This is real and it's happening now. Yes, it would be easy to ask Google or Facebook or whoever your latest Down with the Kids app happens to be now, and ask them to concentrate their algorithms on showing us only good news. And seriously, there are people out there screaming out for this kind of tactical censorship right now. It's social engineering, as if it's their right to be protected from pain, to live in some form of Disneyland. And we can come to this, but just remember for now that this is us asking to be controlled, when really it is us who are in control. We can have what we wish for. And that's why debating some of the most demanding philosophical questions needs to be done right now. That's why we need to become part of the conversation. We need to learn to row, but productively. Essentially, we need to be careful what we wish for. Ought we really be choosing Stepford? A protected, cosseted life, immunised against pain? Is that our path to happiness, our way out of depression? I think not. But how can I know this? How can I be sure? How can we know anything in this world of fake news and flooded by information? Let alone make decisions that will shape our futures and our children's futures. How can we decide this way forward? Well, I sit here sat in the sunshine, nearly 20 degrees centigrade in February, a British winter, not right. And I know that depression is on the up, and that the robots are on the way, and that we are at best facing a future of human irrelevance, a future of weak masses versus strong elites, and at worst, a total systemic collapse. And for now, this is against a backdrop of political chaos. That's Brexit in the UK and a national emergency in the US, Trump's wall, and an apparent rise of nationalism, of racism, and any other isms you can think of reported across a media which can't be trusted one way or another. There's perpetual discord, like maleness is bad and gender is relative, and like refugees are good and migrants bad. We are passively and consistently divided up and conquered. Deep state, deep global state. This is a global world versus the people. This is a time in which even the democratic process only serves to create difference. It's a time when we expect to express ourselves, to express our billions of years of evolutionary complexity. And we find that complexity compressed and squeezed through a lens of consumerism and economic utility. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. How long have we known that? But the economic myth that whatever we need can be found through a consumerist God, through economic growth. We know this myth, but we continue to follow the rules, and we find that even our best efforts get turned against us, only serving to accelerate some form of destruction of environment and self-destruction of our mental health. This kind of thing, this is how we know it's not working. And we should be listening to ourselves and to those others who've heard and want to make a difference. But we also know how we've evolved to be cognitive robots susceptible to and product of social manipulation. We know that much of who we are, much of what defines each and every single individual one of us, much of what drives our behavior and our thought, or our notion of ourself, is in danger at any time of being hijacked. We know how social media might just be a reflection of our everyday selves, a mirror of all that is good in humanity, but how it also has evolved to go bad, as will any survivor in a competitive system that goes unchecked or unregulated. We're fed a mythical landscape of algorithmic choice, chosen by AI in the name of convenience, and we're shown which products to buy, which opinion to follow, which facts to believe. And this is the world we inhabit, our own personal landscape, in which we struggle with mythical foes for mythical rewards. And yes, the manipulation has always been there. This we have evolved with, we've become accustomed to, and that may be where the lives of heroes are spent, and where you're prepared to spend your own life, in that mythical landscape. But now, with things moving on apace, we control the mind control. The mind hack is official. It's down to you. And we know Facebook, social media has never been free. We pay for our entertainment and convenience with information about our behavior. And yes, we have been warned about what will happen if we don't take care. Social media, right now, not a joke, not a maybe, not on its way. Social media right now is controlling how you think, how I think, controlling what we see, what we hear, our aspirations and our morals. It's forming us into groups and into divides, telling us who to vote for. Now, and it can only get worse. At the same time, we begin to see this. Our innocence is getting stripped away layer by layer, like we've seen our own nakedness, and Eve has eaten of the apple, and we're getting cast out of the garden, clutching tiny little ivy leaves in front of our exposed bodies, cowering cold and naked under the heavens. The rain blows and the sun scorches the earth, the storms rage, and we are as lost children cast out, reaching out for guidance. So what do we do? For thousands of years, philosophers have talked about the importance of knowing thyself. The answer, what can I do, is to know thyself. Without that, there's no conversation, there can be no evolution. And this is a knowing born of hard work. We're all sleepwalkers, but we are all also observers. What makes us human is to be able to switch our state. We're masters of this. We can do it quickly and completely as and when we need to. It is as though we're constantly in fear of being trapped and always in any space. We'll position ourselves against the back wall and check out the exits before we settle. Why not in our cognitive space? Map out the mental landscape we're living in up to this moment. Take a look around at our existing landscape, get to know it so that we can redraw it. Then, as though we're waking out of a dream, the next step can be fully conscious. This is a superpower that lets you observe the chaos around you, gets you to see the blind robots chasing outdated prizes and chemical puppeteers pulling on human heartstrings, and to be able to see your own part in this. You become the explorer, where you'll discover new wonders of the world and meet others on a similar journey. That's a skill. Probably one of the greatest skills you'll ever get, however you get it. And once you learn a process that allows you to know yourself, no one can ever take that away from you. You are in charge. I'd instinctively already answered the one truly serious philosophical question set by Camus. It was never so hard for me that I didn't want to live. In my depression, I was simply asking how I might feel better. The starting point for me was to ask, what's the point? Find the question that works for you. Find the question for yourself, the question that drives you, and follow that. I mean, for me, there were deep questions that I had to find answers for. Questions that philosophers had been arguing over for years, sort of a natural home. I already knew that much of what I would come up with was already there, but no problem. That meant shortcuts, new directions, and questions I hadn't even considered. And instinctively, through this focus, I found my narrative beginning to shift. And by that, I mean that the way that I saw the world was evolving. I was remapping the way I saw my world, and through that, the way I saw myself. And as the answers came, I was getting to a position where my choices would make a difference. And this felt good. I could choose my path. I could see where my next steps should take me. I was waking up and I realized that the key to this was in taking responsibility for myself. I could take responsibility for my thoughts, my actions, my behaviors. So simple, but such a breakthrough, and also more than a little bit scary. It seemed to me that deeply rooted in all of the science that we rely on to tell us who we are, to tell us how we should function, the science that we hang our hats on, in that there's ultimately a message of free will, of choice, and ultimately of a better future. The problem with that, of course, is that it doesn't come without effort or without pain. Consider that all of your hard work, all of your struggle to make a life for yourself has been worse than a waste of time. It's been a childlike search for acceptance, just a hormonal soup, an electromagnetic eddy, some sort of transient dissipative force out of the chaos. You've been tricked out of your life and out of the lives of your children by age-old myths. And these are myths that would blindly lead you into extinction. Bad stuff? Bad, depressing stuff? Maybe. Or opportunity for change. Certainly, it was that kind of thinking that explained to me why I felt so bad. And that allowed me to do something about it. For me, it works to confront the fear, to hear the subconscious, to listen, and to view our own habits and to take control of these things, or at least to acknowledge them and be able to push them away if need be. And we need this focus because without it, we won't be able to recognize ourselves. And if we are unsure of who we are and of how we operate, then how can we possibly join the conversation? Point is that the darkness, the journey, the discovery needs to be there. The darkness is what shows us the light. And understanding that, that's where the road to freedom starts. It may seem a lonely path at first, but there are many others on the same path. This is global. People are waking up everywhere. Let's look at it another way. You're in a trap, but you have a choice. And the only way out of this trap is to exercise that choice. Do nothing and your future will be left to the robots. Your kids will be enslaved. You'll be destined to a life of servitude. Make a choice, however. Begin to learn, to listen, become the observer, and this is where you can begin to make a difference. What with all of the mind hacking and the big data manipulation, it essentially boils down to you. You, the one to choose your own narrative. You, the one in charge. You, responsible. And yes, you can give that responsibility away. Beg Smith to plug you back in. Allow another to take control. Sleepwalk. But ultimately, the responsibility remains. Red pill, waking up, or blue pill, sticking your fingers in your ears. You making that choice. I've got some triggers for you. Much as it pains me to say so, I want Tommy Robinson's social media accounts reinstated. Much as I hate to do so, I want to point out that climate science is only a theory and doesn't tell us the truth about global warming. And much as I'm against being manipulated, brain hacked by the likes of Google, etc., I want to say that maybe AI could be used as a force for good. Triggered by any of that? Offended? Well, how does that feel? And can you separate yourself from those emotions? Can you calm them? Remain logical? Tackle the arguments? We need to choose to do the right thing as individuals, to take responsibility, and to do that we need to be prepared to think, to take control and become our own observer, so that we can reclaim the conversation. You have the ability to join the game, you have the responsibility to try. The future is yours. This is the way out. What is our alternative? Increasing violence, increasing divide. Doesn't have to be that way. Okay, so I'm ending it there. I've been Ant Biggs and this has been Cow the Podcast. Thank you for tuning in and the support that I'm getting. If you want any more information, you can find transcripts, you can sign up, you can subscribe or donate to Cow the Podcast. That's at cowthepodcast.online. Look forward to hearing from you and talking to you next week.